have another teller, Joanne, who is going to tell us an Irish folk tale about how cats got 9 lives. Woo! Joanne.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This folktale comes from the notebook of the cat crazy lady who shall remain nameless. Douglas McDoon, born in 1740, was a very handsome cat. He had a beautiful gray coat, he had golden eyes, and he had a cute little splash of white on his chest. Douglas came from a long line of rat catchers that had their start in the 5th century of the Scottish Highlands. Douglas's ancestor, Angus McDoon, worked for the MacLeod family, who started humbly as farmers, grain farmers. Through the centuries, the McDoon cats became legendary as rat catchers. And as the MacLeod clan grew in their farming prowess, ending up, when Douglas was born, with 1.3 million acres of farmland and thousands of tenant farmers. Likewise, the McDoon cats had a rare position. Douglas himself, on his first birthday, was named official rat catcher of the MacLeod clan farms. Life was very good for Douglas, until it wasn't. The MacLeod clan, as large and as wealthy as they were, banded together with other Highland clans because they did not like the fact that there was a British king on the throne. They were staunch Catholics, staunch House of Stuart supporters, and they decided, as wealthy, powerful Highland farmers, that they had what it took to defeat the British and restore a Stuart king to the throne. They were sadly mistaken. The Jacobite rebellion in 1746 was a disaster. The British crushed those clans of the Highlands and left them in tatters. They had debt, they had lost land, they had lost their right to wear tartan. Under the yoke of the British, a further indignity occurred. The Highland clans, including the MacLeods, were then pressured, in order to pay for their debts, to transition from grain farming to sheep farming. They had very little appetite for that change, but that was their only recourse, because they had been under the threat of complete bankruptcy if they didn't pay off their debts. The consequence was, as we all know, is called the Highland clearances. Thousands upon thousands of farmers evicted from their grain farms and sent out to try to make a new way for themselves. Many ended up overseas, but a few made their way to the west coast of Scotland. And that's who Douglas threw in with, because Douglas had also been evicted. No grain farms, no grain bins, no need for rat catchers. When the troop of the Cameron family that Douglas was traveling with arrived at Mallock, which is on the west coast of Scotland, It had been a hard journey. It had been cold, it had been lack of food, it had been lack of water, and Douglas had never experienced such hardship, and he truly felt that this must be the end of his life, that he had no life left. To add insult to injury, although the Cameron clan were able to take up farming there in Malik, there was no need or demand for rat catchers. There was many rat catchers already there, and Douglas was turned out, sent back on the road with this word: if you want the job, you better get yourself over to Ireland. The West Coast is hiring cats like you. Get your way there. Well, Douglas felt he had no choice. He was going to make his way to Killybegs Seafood Factory on the west coast of Ireland. Well, poor Douglas, he made his way to the ferry terminal, and of course was cold and rainy and no food and no water. And again, he felt himself feeling, I have no life. My life is over. He crawled himself up onto the ferry. In 2 days of torrential storms, the ferry near capsizing. And Douglas again was losing hope that he could ever have a new life. When the ferry landed in Belfast, he did find some sustenance. He got some water and he had a little sleep. And he felt a renewed enthusiasm, which was a good thing because Douglas was facing a 5-day journey to Killybegs across the barren, cold, and desolate peat bogs of Ireland. Those 5 days were terrifying for Douglas. He was pursued by wild coyotes. There were virtually no mice to be had in the middle of the winter. They had all hibernated. He was not sure he was going to make it. Again, he was thinking, my life is over. I have no life. On the 5th day, he noticed in the clearing there was a well. And he was so grateful to see that because, of course, he was very thirsty. And he made his way up to the well. And as he got to the well, if there wasn't a box sitting next to it, a very pretty looking box with a beautiful iron handle. Well, Douglas, being a cat, was curious about what's in the box. And he opened the box. Up popped the weirdest looking little man you could ever imagine. It was a leprechaun, like our guest. Except this one was very ugly. He was very short. He had a big, long, curly orange beard. He was wearing kind of a green outfit. He had a big, long, red hat on his head. He looked at Douglas and he said, I'm a leprechaun. Thank you so much for releasing me from this terrible box. It took somebody opening the lid for that to happen. Thanks that I'm going to give you for that is I'm going to grant you a wish. Douglas, what would you like as a wish? Well, it didn't take Douglas 2 seconds. He said, I want some lives. He said, I have come so close to losing my life on this horrible journey I've been on. I'm really not even sure what I'm going to be facing. If I could have some spare lives, that would be so good because then I could continue to have a good life. The leprechaun said, well, that's kind of an unusual request, but I think we can do it. But in order for you to earn your lives, what I need you to do is answer riddles. And I've got, it just so happens to be some very nice riddles in this box here. Now, of course, the leprechaun was thinking to themselves, as trickery as they can be, he's a cat. He'll never know any of the answers to the riddles. He invited Douglas to start your first riddle, sir. Tell us an answer and you get a life. Douglas looked at the riddle. What is most useful broken? Douglas looked around. He said, I know that. That's an egg. Leprechaun was quite surprised, but oh well. You've got one life. Your next riddle. Douglas picked up his next riddle. What has teeth but cannot bite or chew? Douglas said, I know that one. That's a comb. Well, the leprechaun was quite surprised. He says, how would a cat know anything about combs? But he did. All right, you've got 2 lives. Pick another riddle. Douglas was really warming up to this. What band never plays music? Oh, Douglas said that's easy. That would be a rubber band. The leprechaun was quite surprised. Okay, you've got 3 lives. Now keep pulling if you want. I don't think you're going to get any more right. Douglas said, well, what has keys but doesn't unlock anything? He says, I know that one too. That's going to be a piano. The leprechaun is now getting a little bit irritated. He said, you're up to 6 lives. Okay, see, you can get another one. Well, Douglas said, here's the next riddle for me. What has legs but can't walk or run? Douglas chuckled. He said, oh, that's a table. Everybody knows that. The leprechaun couldn't contain his shock. Where did this cat come from? All right, pull another riddle if you must. Douglas was so happy. He said, well, this one asks, what has hands but can't clap? And Douglas said, it's a clock, it's a clock, it's a clock. The leprechaun was really, really getting steaming. He said, okay, you can continue. I don't understand how you're doing this, but I did say that if you got a riddle right, you could have a life. What's the next one? The riddle is, what has a neck but no head? Douglas, with that Cheshire smile, said, well, I think that must be a bottle. The leprechaun put his fists on his hips and said, you are really doing something that I don't understand how you're doing it. But I stay to my word. You can keep pulling for riddles, but I don't think you're going to get one more right. I can't see that at all. Douglas reached in. All right. Well, the question is, what month is 28 days long? Douglas said, you can't fool me on that one. All of them. Well, that's it. The leprechaun lost it, and he was not very happy. But Douglas reminded him that the leprechaun did say if he got the riddles correct, he could have another life. All right, you can pull one more riddle, but I have no more lives to give after that if you get it right. And Douglas pulled. 9th riddle. Perhaps his 9th spare life. What can you break without touching it? Douglas was delighted. Sir, you know this answer even. You can't break a promise. And I now have 9 lives. The leprechaun said, not so fast. You know, I don't think this was really fair. You've taken all of my spare lives with this brilliance of yours. What I'm going to suggest for you to actually get these 9 lives is you must, within our view, look around And if you can find a fair young lady within our eyesight who's having a birthday today, then you can have your 9 lives. Otherwise, the bet's off. Of course, Douglas looks around and he spies. He spies the most beautiful fair maiden in all the meadow. And he goes up to her and he says, "Fair lady, would you perchance be having a birthday today?"
Yes.
Oh! Douglas turned back to the leprechaun. The leprechaun was steaming. You could see the smoke coming out of his ears. He said, "You've really bested me. Enjoy your 9 lives. I'm off and you're never going to see me again." And away the leprechaun went. And Douglas went up to the beautiful lady and said, "Thank you, my dear lady, for saving me and giving me my lives. For you, this beautiful box, for you to always remember the beauty of being kind."